Imagine stepping into a Pokemon gym. Like, you've prepped your entire team, you've memorized the type matchups, and you are fully expecting this brutal, overwhelming barrage of fire-type attacks.
Right, you're bracing for impact.
Exactly. The air inside is just shimmering with heat. But instead of glaring at you from across the battlefield, the gym leader just smiles, steps back, and asks you to dance.
Which is wild. I mean, it completely shatters the expectation of what a high-stakes competitive environment is supposed to feel like, right?
Oh, totally.
We are so used to seeing strategy as this, like, ruthless, precision-engineered machine where you just crunch the numbers to minimize risk.
Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a brilliant set of source materials in front of us today. It's a character study and strategy document titled Addy's Pokemon Notes.
And it is such a great read.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore how this beautifully written narrative about a gym leader named Addy the Firekeeper of Lavaridge flawlessly translates her quiet emotional philosophy into a highly synergistic, competitive Sun Offense team.
The translation from lore to game mechanics is just incredible.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are a hardcore competitive player who spends hours tweaking EV spreads, or you just love studying how narrative informs team dynamics, there are huge aha moments ahead.
Oh, for sure. The documents make it clear that to really grasp how Addy's team functions mechanically, you have to understand the environment that shaped her.
Right, her roots.
Yeah, we start in her childhood home of Lavaridge Town. The notes describe it as a place that smells of steam and stories.
I love that phrasing.
Me too. It's built entirely around these natural hot springs with warm air constantly rising from the earth. And the locals there, they don't view heat as a destructive force, you know?
Right, the text specifically notes it's a place where heat doesn't destroy, it holds you together.
Exactly, and Addy just absorbed that perspective completely.
While the other kids were out running around battling, she was kind of just wandering. She'd follow the curls of steam into quiet places, sitting by fire pits late into the night, just observing and talking to the local Pokemon.
The notes actually describe her as being like a flame waiting for air.
Which is such a vivid image.
Yeah.
And that quiet, observant nature leads directly to the defining moment of her training career, the day she chose her starter, Cyndaquil.
Right, because most trainers approach that choice looking for like base stat totals or rarity or just immediate power.
They want the strongest one.
Yeah. But Addy looked for feeling. She chose Cyndaquil precisely because it was small, timid, and its flame flickered uncertainly.
She crouches down and says to it, and this is a direct quote from the notes, "You don't have to burn bright all the time, yeah."
That line gives me chills.
It completely reframes the typical competitive mindset. You don't have to be at maximum intensity every single second to be effective.
And when she says that, the flame on Cyndaquil's back sparks just a little bit. They chose each other in that moment.
What's fascinating here is how that single interaction establishes her fundamental relationship with fire.
Yes. She doesn't see it as a wild beast that needs to be tamed or dominated. She sees it as a warmth that requires understanding. It's a rhythm that she has to, tune herself into.
It really makes me think of learning to play a stringed musical instrument. Like if you just grab a guitar and try to force the strings to do what you want with pure strength.
You're going to snap a string.
Exactly. You'll make a terrible noise and break something. You have to learn the tension. You have to work with the physical reality of the instrument to find the rhythm.
That's a great analogy.
And Addy is doing that with fire. She's timing her breath with the flame, letting it flow, instead of forcing it to just erupt on command.
And that rhythm basically became her entire training philosophy. She didn't battle conventionally at all.
Oh, she became a performer.
Yeah. She became known in Lavaridge as a fire breather through these nightly performances by the hot springs. She would toss embers and spin, and her Pokemon would mimic her movements.
Treating training like choreography rather than combat.
Exactly. She'd exhale, and her Pokemon would match her with a burst of flame. She'd clap, and they'd respond to the timing.
Which perfectly leads into how she built the rest of her roster. Because she wasn't out there throwing Pokeballs at the biggest monsters she could find in the tall grass.
No, not at all.
The notes emphasize that she was a breeder at heart. She hatched eggs near the natural heat of the Lavaridge Springs, literally humming them to sleep.
Her core philosophy on raising a team is so clearly stated in the text. She says, if you raise them from the start, they don't just listen, they trust.
Trust over obedience.
Yes. Her team wasn't a collection of optimized weapons, it was a family gathered around a fire.
And as she grew, and that timid Cyndaquil eventually evolved into a Typhlosion, She naturally stepped into the role of gym leader.
But she redefined the Lavaridge gym entirely. She isn't there to dominate challengers.
Right. She stands in the center of the arena wearing a red bandana with ash on her boots and invites them to dance with the flame.
It's such a vibe shift from a normal gym.
But wait, so if a challenger beats her, she doesn't just, hand over a badge and send them packing.
Oh, not at all. The notes detail how she actually invites victorious challengers to sit by the fire afterward.
Really?
Yeah, to share stories and genuinely connect. For her, the battle isn't the culmination of the interaction. It's simply the icebreaker to see how they handle the heat.
Which is a beautiful sentiment, but we really need to pivot to the mechanics here.
Let's do it.
Because she is still a gym leader defending a title.
Mm.
And if you're listening to this and you play competitive Pokemon, you know that a warm, story-sharing approach doesn't stop an opponent from sweeping your whole team.
Right. You still need to win.
Exactly. So how does a dancer's philosophy actually win high-stakes battles?
Well, that translation from lore to application is the absolute genius of the document. Addy runs a highly technical Sun Offense tempo balance team.
Every Pokemon on her roster represents a piece of her personality.
Yeah, but mechanically, they form this devastatingly synergistic unit that traps opponents in her specific rhythm.
Let's look at the engine of that team first. Because to force a challenger into that dance, you need something that dictates the environment from turn one.
And that's Ninetales. Ninetales possesses the Drought ability, which automatically sets up harsh sunlight the exact moment it steps onto the battlefield.
Such a crucial role.
Definitely. And Addy runs it with a timid nature, fully invested speed and special attack EVs, and she gives it a heat rock to hold to extend the duration of the sun.
So it powers up the entire team's fire-type moves immediately. The narrative connection here is just seamless.
It really is.
Ninetales is described in the lore as graceful, glowing, and possessing a quiet wisdom. It walks in, smiles, and suddenly the whole room is warmer.
That's exactly what the Drought ability is doing mechanically. It's warming the room and setting the pace.
But it isn't just a passive weather setter, right?
No, not at all. Ninetales runs moves like Will-O-Wisp to burn and cripple physical attackers, and Encore to lock opponents into useless status moves.
So it disrupts the opponent and forces them to play at Addy's tempo.
Exactly. And once that sun is up, you need a partner that thrives under that specific environmental pressure. Which brings us back to her first partner, Typhlosion.
In the lore, Typhlosion is her emotional mirror, is her calm, steady anchor.
The don't panic, just breathe partner.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at its competitive build, you see a choice scarf locked onto the move Eruption.
Oh, yeah. It's brutal.
Under the harsh sunlight set by Ninetales, a full health Eruption from a choice scarf Typhlosion is a terrifying, blazing fast special nuke.
It melts everything.
It's a brilliant contradiction. The Pokemon that represents her quiet, steady, emotional anchor is also her most explosive burst of immediate pressure.
It just proves that being steady doesn't mean being passive.
Exactly.
And that quiet, overwhelming power is then contrasted by the next member of the core flame, which is Magmortar.
Oh, man. Magmortar.
The notes literally describe Magmortar as the fireworks goblin.
I love that. Pure, loud, affectionate chaos.
It was this chaotic baby that kept burning things and tripping over itself. And Addy never disciplined the wildness out of it. She just told it, all right, if you're going to be chaos, be fun chaos.
I was actually looking at its moveset, trying to figure out how fun chaos translates to a battle simulator.
And what did you find?
Well, when an opponent sees a fire-type gym leader, they naturally bring a specially defensive water or rock type to wall the damage. They assume they're safe.
Right, that's the standard counterplay.
But then Magmortar comes in wearing an assault vest, which allows it to stomach massive special hits, and it reveals its move pool. It runs Thunderbolt, Focus Blast, and Psychic.
It completely shatters the opponent's assumed safety. It is the team's wide coverage breaker.
Yeah.
If the opponent tries to pivot into a water type to absorb a fire blast, Magmortar just throws a Thunderbolt and disrupts their entire defensive core.
It perfectly embodies that unpredictable, chaotic energy by punishing the exact counters that opponents rely on.
So you have the mystique of Ninetales, the core flame of Typhlosion, and the chaotic coverage of Magmortar.
That is a massive amount of offensive heat. But like anyone who has ever piloted a Pure Sun team knows the bottleneck here.
You eventually burn out.
Exactly. You get worn down by status conditions like paralysis or toxic poison, or you just run into a specialized defensive wall that outlasts your sun turns. So how does Addy prevent her team from flaming out?
She prevents it by relying on the non-fiery, softer parts of her personality. She brings in outliers.
Okay.
The first is Altaria, which is a dragon and flying type. Narratively, Altaria is unique because it was the first Pokemon she didn't raise from an egg.
Oh, right, she found it injured.
Yeah, she nursed it back to health. It became the singer in the smoke, the presence that brought calm when the fire got too loud.
I spent a while puzzling over this inclusion, to be honest. A fluffy cloud dragon on a hyper-aggressive sun team, it feels like it kills the momentum.
It seems like a weird fit at first glance.
But when you look at the mechanics, Altaria is basically acting like a circuit breaker for the entire team.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Think about it. When a high-intensity electrical system gets overloaded, say, from too many status conditions or too much residual damage, it threatens to fry the whole board.
Right.
Altaria trips the breaker. It uses its natural cure ability to shed its own status conditions just by switching out, and then it uses Heal Bell to cure the rest of the team, all while keeping itself healthy with Roost.
It entirely resets the board state. The Sun team can push itself to the absolute limit, knowing Altaria is right there to absorb the punishment and wipe the slate clean.
It's the cooldown after a high-intensity workout.
Exactly. And because Ninetales has the sun up, Altaria's flamethrower still hits incredibly hard, so it actually maintains offensive pressure while providing that crucial emotional and mechanical regulation.
Okay, so Altaria handles the status conditions.
Yeah.
But how does Addy deal with opponents who just stack rock types to wall her fire attacks completely?
That's where she has to get cheeky. She brings out Lopunny.
A normal type rabbit.
Yeah. The lore notes that Lopunny actually took the longest to bond with Addy. It didn't trust her at first.
But Addy stayed patient. She didn't force the connection and eventually earned that trust.
Right. Lopunny represents her playful daredevil streak. And competitively, having a fast normal type provides a critical non-fire angle of attack.
Lopunny comes in and completely scrambles traditional anti-fire game plans.
It plays intricate mind games, using Substitute to create a decoy and Encore to trap the opponent into repeating a useless defensive move.
The item choice here is what really sells the lore connection for me. Lopunny runs High Jump Kick, which is a devastating fighting-type move that shatters the rock and steel types that usually counter fire.
But it's risky.
Super risky. If it misses, Lopunny takes massive crash damage, so Addy gives it a wide lens to hold, which boosts its accuracy.
That is the perfect mechanical representation of an earned trust relationship.
Isn't it? She trusts Lopunny to take the risky daredevil shot and provides the exact support needed to make sure it lands.
Lopunny is the tempo thief that just keeps the opponent entirely off balance.
So we have the weather engine, the core breakers, the healer, and the disruptor. But every gym leader needs an ace.
And every strategy needs a win condition. For Addy, that is Victini.
The lore of their meeting is so vital here. Victini is a mythical psychic and fire type, and it wasn't caught in the wild.
No, it just appeared during one of Addy's nightly performances because the rhythm was perfect.
The notes specify it didn't join her because she was the strongest. It joined her because she made others feel like they could win.
Victini is the literal embodiment of hope and belief, and when you read the competitive breakdown, the power level is just staggering.
Yeah, Addy equips it with a choice band, locking it into the move V-Create.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the battle plan, Victini provides absurd, uncontainable pressure.
A choice band V-Create fired off in harsh sunlight.
It forces the opponent into pure panic mode. It punches massive holes in the opposing team.
And if the matchup isn't right, Victini simply uses U-turn to deal damage and instantly switch out.
Pivoting right into Lopunny to trap the opponent's response, keeping Addy's momentum perfectly intact.
The designer steps back in the notes and synthesizes how all these pieces move together. They note that the team basically operates on two distinct gears, the blaze tempo and the dance tempo.
The blaze tempo is pure, overwhelming aggression. Victini punching holes, Typhlosion sweeping with eruption, mag mortar shattering defensive walls.
You force the opponent backward through sheer damage.
But the moment the opponent braces for that impact and tries to set up their own defensive strategy, Addy shifts to the dance tempo.
Ninetales locks them in with Encore, Lopunny sets up a substitute and steals their momentum, and Altaria heals the team.
The opponent is constantly reacting. They never get to execute their own game plan because they're too busy trying to decipher which tempo Addy is playing to.
To maintain objectivity here, we do have to acknowledge the mechanical flaws built into the roster.
Right.
Because the designer is entirely transparent about the fact that this is not an invincible, perfectly optimized spreadsheet team.
Right, there are vulnerabilities.
The glaring one is Stealth Rock, which is an entry hazard that damages Pokemon every time they switch onto the field.
And for a team heavily reliant on fire types.
It's bad. Especially relying on Typhlosion being at full health for maximum eruption damage. That chip damage is severely punishing.
The team is also highly vulnerable to strong priority moves once Victini drops its own defenses by using V-Create.
Most notably, the team completely lacks any form of hazard removal.
Yeah, there is no Pokemon on the roster with Rapid Spin or Defog to clear away those stealth rocks.
The designer explicitly states in the notes that if a player wanted to optimize the team for a pure win rate, the very first step would be swapping a slot for hazard removal.
But they intentionally chose not to do it.
Adding a Pokemon just to spin away rocks would optimize the team at the direct cost of character accuracy.
Exactly. Addy isn't about perfectly clearing away every obstacle in her path. She's about feeling the heat, taking the hits, and dancing through them anyway.
Fixing that mechanical flaw would literally ruin the truth of who she is as a character.
She accepts the chip damage, she accepts the risks, and she trusts her team to navigate the pressure.
It proves that a trainer, or honestly any system, doesn't need to be flawless to be highly effective.
The team doesn't win by being an unkillable, mathematically perfect force. It wins by dragging the opponent into Addy's specific rhythm and forcing them to play her game.
It all comes back to the overarching theme of her life in Lavaridge. You can carry grief and still shine. You can be soft like Altaria and still burn incredibly bright like Typhlosion.
You do not have to aggressively control the fire to become it.
This raises an important question regarding how we view competitive environments.
It really does, because when most people approach their goals, they ask, how do I win? They seek the optimized spreadsheet answer.
But Addy's entire existence, reflected in her team building, asks a profoundly different question. She asks, how do we grow?
So what does this all mean for you?
I want to leave you with this final thought. Think about the systems or the teams you are building in your own life right now. Maybe it's a project team you manage at work, the way you structure your daily routines, or even how you approach your own hobbies.
Yeah, look at your own setups.
When you build those systems, are you acting like the traditional engineer? Are you trying to aggressively control every single variable, remove every metaphorical hazard, and force the fire to do exactly what you want just so you can guarantee a win?
Or are you learning to breathe with it?
Are you willing to risk a few unoptimized flaws, a few metaphorical stealth rocks, to create a rhythm and a team that actually feels like you? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to build a flawless machine.
Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is invite the challenge in, step back, and see how well you can dance with the flame.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep dancing with that flame, and we will catch you next time.